I get asked this all the time. Who's a player that's bad in real life, but is good at fantasy? Well, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and despite already having one, I'm going to be buying a second apron. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms, so double bang it. Thumb it up. Leave your comments down below, which I am sure this show is going to garner some comments. Let's just get this part out of the way. When I say that these guys are bad, they're not bad. They are NBA players who are better than 99.9% of everybody on earth. We know this. They are the top, whatever players, 1,000 players. Let's be broad and say there are some players that maybe shouldn't play. Whatever. They're very good. Some of them are better than that. What I am also saying is, and I know, again, people are going to overreact to some of these names. Scoring big points because you get a lot of shots does not necessarily make you good. Grabbing a lot of rebounds because you play out of minutes does not make you good. There's a lot of things that can make a player good versus bad. And context is always very dependent in any sort of assessment of any player. If you're on a different team, would your role be different? You do different things and you perform better or worse, whatever. That is all true. All right, we understand all of that. The other part of it is being bad right now does not preclude you from being better. You might improve. You might put up better numbers. You might still be bad as an impact player. You might put up worse numbers, but be better as an impact player. You might get worse than where you currently are. All of this, and again, this is relatively lighthearted. I think you can already guess, well, you can already see the thumbnail picture, who at the point of me recording this, I don't know who I'm going to put on the thumbnail, but I've got some ideas of which one I'll put there. This is lighthearted. If you are a fan, someone who's thinking of starting a Muse account, which reassess your whole life, for one of these players, I apologize. I'm not having a go at you personally. We're talking relatively with the skill level of or the impact that these players have. I'm sure that won't stop people being insane. And some of you will disagree or agree or whatever, and that is totally okay. I also want to hear your ideas before I actually reveal this list of who you think is going to be on this list. The players who are bad, relative term, bad in real life, but good in fantasy. Who is overrated in that respect? Who do you think it is? Let us begin. Let's go to Washington. And let's talk about Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma is an NBA champion. Absolutely. I loved the way that he played to his role in that team. Fantastic stuff. Kyle Kuzma now plays for the Washington Wizards. Well, actually, by the time you're watching this, I don't know. Maybe there's a trade that's happened. I'm recording this a week in advance. On the 2nd of July, I'm recording this. Kuzma's numbers, and you can see up the top there of this graphic, -1 ranking last season for fantasy category leagues, 52nd. For Yahoo points, 49th. That suggests a really, really good player, yes? We have 24 players make an all-star team minus, plus a couple of extra due to injuries, 26 players. We have that. This suggests that Kuzma's not that far away. I'd suggest that's not true. He's a very poor defender who has very poor shot selection, who's improved as a passer, absolutely, but has had iffy shooting through many parts of his career. Kuzma, if he was pushed onto a situation or into a situation similar to what he was with the Lakers when they won that title, where a lower usage, lower minutes, he would be not remotely relevant for fantasy. He is relevant for fantasy, and he put up these numbers, 59th in -1, 49th in points, because he played on a Wizards team where he was the number one option most of the year, basically the whole year on a team that traded away Bradley Beal and ended up with the second overall pick in the NBA draft. This was an accumulation season for Kuzma, but that doesn't mean that he is a good player. This stuff all is important when we talk about off seasons and when we talk about dynasty leagues, because if Kuzma is traded somewhere else, let's say he does go to Sacramento and it's for Harrison Barnes, let's say, I don't know. Well, is he the third best or number 3 offensive option behind Sabonis and Fox? Probably. Would they prioritize Murray versus Kuzma? Well, I don't know if they'd have a choice because Kuzma would take the shots. Is Kuzma a worse defender than Harrison Barnes? A worse shooter? Probably, yeah, also. Probably is. So, would we be even discussing him as a top 100 player in that sort of a scenario? I don't think so. In EPM, he was the 209th ranked player. In DPM, Darko plus minus, which tries to project the value of someone moving forward, well, he is a disgusting 449th. There's only about 520 players in the NBA. I like to get an overview of a few different advanced metrics because, again, there can be one standout one. Like that Darko one's really low. And I don't think Kuzma is that bad. Another one I'm going to start including a little bit more is one called Drip, which, again, tries to give you an idea of what has happened, but also giving you an idea a little, not as forward-looking as what Darko is, but more of an individual in-time snapshot. And that's what Drip gives you. Adjusts every day. He's 244th there. So, again, there are 150 starting slots in the NBA. Kuzma, according to fantasy rankings, was top 60 category, top 50 points. And all these advanced things would say probably not a starter. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but also someone, again, that eventually, and part of the reason of this is we talk dynasty, we talk long-term, but we also talk redraft, is if a player moves into a different situation, if the team around him gets better or he moves to a different team that he is not good enough, I don't think, as an impact player, to demand the level of touches and minutes that he's currently getting, meaning that the production probably drops pretty quickly. So that's Kyle Kuzma. And I know there are going to be many of you, because I've had these arguments with people before. Look, Kuzma, you averaged 23, 8, and 4. Can't tell me that's not good. I almost put Brandon Ingram on this as spoiler alert, he's not. Because Ingram is an okay positive. He's 88th percentile Darko. He's a pretty good impact player, but his perception is way better than what he actually is. So there you go. Kyle Kuzma, the first guy on this list. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. While you're watching this, might be just sitting at a baseball game over in the States. And if I want to get tickets for baseball, well, Game Time is the place to go because they're an authorized ticket reseller for Major League Baseball. And the closer you get to Game Time, as is the name, the price drops. It doesn't surge up. It's actually like, hey, we want people to come. We'll drop the prices down. So that's one great feature. They've got views from your seat as well, where you click in, look at the seat and go, what's it going to look like when I go sit there? Am I going to be stuck behind a pole? Am I going to have a terrible angle? No. This is going to show you all the different options that you've got. And that's why the Game Time app is so good. Well, it's one of the many reasons why the Game Time app is so good. So it helps you to take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets and do that with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create the account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Man, does this nerd even watch games? You just look at stats. Kuzma's way better. Just preempting comments. All right, let's look at the next guy. Don't think I'm going to get any arguments here because I'm pretty sure the majority of people who watch this show and take in what I say have been convinced by now, but I know it's not everybody because I still see it. I still see this guy's name mentioned just way more than it should be. What do you think about Mo Bamba signing with the Clippers? I think he's bad. Simple as that. Do you think there's any potential in Mo Bamba? No, we've had 6 years of this. I don't think he's good. Again, none of this stuff precludes weird changes or gigantic improvements. It's unlikely, but doesn't preclude it. Now, Bamba you look at and go, well, those numbers aren't that good, Josh. 272nd in -1 and 301st in points leagues because he barely played. But we all know that every time Mo Bamba pushes into a starting lineup, gets a 23-minute role, 25-minute role, short-term fill-in, everyone will scramble to grab him in fantasy because he does have a good fantasy game. Threes, blocks, rebounds, points. Not a bad free throw shooter. Okay field goals. Pretty good overall fantasy profile. And it's always one of the, if only he played 30 minutes, wow, we'd talk top 50, and we would. We would. But we have seen, after getting picked 6th overall in the draft, I think it was 6th, 6 years ago, he's had chances and it doesn't work out. He was drafted as the backup to Nikola Vucevic. He had a season where he started in the front court, I think, alongside Wendell Carter and played good minutes, but overall he's just not good. 266th in EPM, 317th on Darko. Interestingly, Drip rated him 155th. That's, again, a little outlier stuff. But we have seen it time and time again. So Mo Bamba's not coming to the Clippers to take over from Ivica Zubac. If they re-sign Daniel Tice, which at this time they have not, Tice is a better player than Mo Bamba. Bamba will put up better numbers. You put both of those guys side by side, Tice and Bamba, or even Plumlee, we know that Mo Bamba is by far the best fantasy guy. And I'm not going to deny that if Bamba was in a 27-minute night role, I would 100% use him in fantasy. I would grab him without any question. My issue always with this is that people will start to assume, well, eventually Bamba will get minutes, yeah? Because look at the numbers. Well, Bamba's going to do this. And I go, yeah, well, there's other people who are way more competent behind him who will, eventually they'll figure it out and go, no, we're not using him. But when you get down to last resort, Mo will put him up. And we know that this is the case. He's just bad as an on-court player. And that limits the production, limits the touches, limits the minutes, it limits the game time, it limits the contracts. I think majority of you watching this, that not many will disagree with this one, which is good. But this was a losing battle for me actually, it's not true, because I won the battle. It was a losing battle trying, the volume of arguments against me talking about Mo Bamba was harsh for a few years, but we come out on top. We don't always. And I know that this next one is going to be an impossible battle for me to win. It is very few people are going to agree with me on this. Very few. But Nikola Vucevic is actually bad now. He's bad. I was a big Vucevic guy coming across from Philadelphia to Orlando in the Dwight Howard trade. That was a 3-way deal with the Lakers. That's when he came across. And he didn't really play much in Philly and really started to step up, and I was a big fan of what he was bringing. But at this point, at this age, he's not very good anymore. And this is one of the clearest examples. He finished 51st in -1 rankings, 41st in Yahoo points. And I said to people, I would not, because initially Vucevic's ADP last year was like 30. And I said, there's no way that I am touching him there. Yahoo ranked him 7th or 9th the year before based on 9-cat totals, which again was insane to me. I said, I am never touching him in this spot. To me, he's in the 50s. And again, people, even this year, they said, well, Josh, you just hate Vooch. You were wrong on him. Was I? Having him in the 50s and he finished 51 in -1 and 41st in points, pretty sure that's about bang on. But this is where it starts to become a problem. He sucks. I love Vooch. I think he's been a great player for a long time. Underrated at big stretches. He is just bad now. And I will say that, I could easily say, well, it's going to fall off a cliff at any point. It has. It has fallen off a cliff, but the team, coach, minutes, reputation has not followed yet. There is sometimes a delay in that. It's almost like the Russell Westbrook scenario, which again, people have finally realized that. And sometimes you get out in front of it and you seem like, man, you're telling me that Vooch sucks, but he's 51st ranked player. Well, I guess the other 500 players are all worse. Not really how it works. There is going to be a stage, whether it's this season or next, and again, maybe they've actually moved off of that insane contract they gave Vucevic by the time you're watching this. I don't know. But the Bulls are going to realize this and go, man, is it actually better if we just have Jalen Smith out there? Because Vooch is killing us. He can't shoot. He clogs up areas on the court. His defense is disgraceful. He doesn't protect the rim. What is the point of it? But when he is out there And this could be a scenario when maybe they don't have Levine and they don't have DeRozan this in. That's possible. And there's going to be a stage where Vuce gets more touches and puts up big numbers, and people will come and say, Josh, you said he was bad. Yes, I know. This is the point of this entire show. When fantasy stats don't correlate with how good or how impactful a real life player is. And often we'll have this idea, like with Vuce now, where I believe that he is bad. And you're a year and a half to 2 years ahead of when the fantasy production disappears, because that's sometimes how long reputation, it's like the stink lines of reputation hold on for. Vuce was 211th in EPM, 411th in Darko, and 143rd in Drip. Even though Drip and Darko are very far apart here, 143rd is barely an NBA starter. 411th is terrible, and 211th in EPM is like well below starter level. It definitely does not correlate with a man who's the 41st ranked player in fantasy points. So I don't know what's going to happen with Vuce this season. I don't think that Billy Donovan, the Bulls, are going to play Jalen Smith the same minutes as him. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Vuce is still going to put up okay minutes and okay numbers. And I will probably have him in a situation where, and I did the show yesterday talking about improvements in shooting, like he shot 28% from three. He can easily shoot 31. I might even have him projected in the 50s again. But I think he is bad currently, and I think that it is going to be a drop-off coming really soon. Fantasy value does not equal real-life impact in this case. Again, I know that people are going to disagree with me. I'm aware of that. I just don't think he is very good at this point. And I think the Bulls will be very, very, very much incentivized to go away from him. It's controversial enough for you. Again, people will disagree. And with some of these, there's a chance that he turns it around and has an unbelievable shooting season and starts to pass more and defense gets back. It seems bloody unlikely, but all that could happen. It is totally possible. And this is, again, not to tell you that he sucks for fantasy because those numbers are fine. And I think they might be around that zone again. I don't know. Too early to tell that. Two more that we're going to cover off here. I wonder if you know who they are. Again, when we're doing this, we are talking about where things currently sit. And this one is one that is going to test a lot of people's keyboard restraint. Not that anyone has any of that. But Cam Thomas is bad at the moment. Cam Thomas scores points. Cam Thomas scores a lot of points, and Cam Thomas improved significantly last season. There's no way that I'm debating that with you because he improved a lot. Without any question, Cam Thomas improved big steps last season. People act like Cam Thomas is a borderline all-star, which is like crazy to me. The reason this one is going to be controversial is because they traded away Mikal Bridges. They might be going full teardown. This man, what was his usage last season? Let me have a quick look. 29.7 in 31 minutes. 29.7 is actually low. I thought he might hit 35 this coming year. He might hit 36. He might be Jordan Poole. He might be what I thought Poole's usage would look like moving to Washington. He was 79th in Yahoo Points Leagues, 112th in -1 rankings. Now that's, for category fantasy, we know that Thomas is not very good. He's fine. He has these hot stretches, but below average shooting every year of his career, below average true shooting, terrible effective field goal percentage, 20th percentile, 20th percentile, 24th percentile. That's terrible. Finishing at the rim, 13th percentile. Bruh. 50% on threes. 50 percentile, 36%. Which is a pretty good number. And he did up his volume. Defensively, 5th percentile in EPM. Terrible numbers. He was 207th in EPM, 232nd in Darko, and 225th in Drip. So basically all those stats say the same thing. Not a top 150 guy, probably not a starter, a nice bench guy who takes a lot off the court but gives you a lot with the scoring. Now this season, his bulk stats, his counting stats are probably going to be insane. Not his steals and blocks, he won't do any of that. But his scoring is going to be crazy. Even his assist numbers are probably going to be better. Maybe not. They're probably going to be better though. He might average 30 points a game. Maybe not, but he might average 27. And people say, well, Josh, you said he was bad. This is about like the impact of a player. Look, I think if he's your number one player scoring that many points, you don't win 20 games. He's a guy that I think needs a very specific role and a very specific change to a lot of things he does to be an impactful guy on a good team. But also to think that that's not even going to be a problem for the next few years because the Nets aren't going to be good or they're not going to be challenging. So I think they're going to let Cam Thomas run amok. So he's going to put up a big run of big fantasy numbers. And that 79th in Yahoo points, he will probably be top 50 or 40, I would think. And he will definitely be a top 100 category guy, especially in -1. He might be top 40 or 50 in that as well. Doesn't mean that he's a good player necessarily. Now, it is a skill to take shots. Creating shots for yourself is a skill. I fully acknowledge that, and he does that really well. He is a guy that does not, like, in terms of his shots, 16th percentile in terms of them getting assisted. Now, he improved on that. The year before, he was in the 6th percentile. Only 35% of his shots were assisted. He just did it all himself. And he did improve a lot, changing his game last season. Absolutely. But this man is in the 99th percentile in field goal attempts per 75 possessions last season. 98th percentile in mid-range attempts per 75. They are not the markings of a very good player. Can very easily change. The man is young. He is 22, 23, 4 to 5 years away from his prime. As things currently stand, he is a significantly better fantasy contributor, in points leagues especially, than he is a real-life player. I don't know that you can argue that part of it, but I'm sure somebody will. The last guy I want to talk about here, in depth, is a player that's starting to head down the Nikola Vučević path. In terms of, used to be pretty impactful at what he does, but now we're getting into the stage where I think he might take more off the table than he gives. And that's old mate, Punch Bob Shitbloke, Bobby Portis. Portis is getting older. Portis is one of these players in fantasy that benefits from the way rankings are set up. And we always know that if Brook Lopez or Giannis is out, although last season Glenn Rivers didn't always start him, but when one of those guys are out, Portis will step up. He'll score a lot of points. He'll grab a lot of rebounds. He won't really do anything else. And what he has turned himself into is a very, very good three-point shooter for a big man. And that is deserving of praise. His last 4 years from three, 47, 39, 37, 41. Really strong. Unfortunately, the last 2 seasons, he's been in the bottom 20th percentile of all NBA players in defensive metrics. He is an above-average usage player, 22.5 last season, the highest usage since his second year in Chicago. Not his second year in Chicago, sorry, the year that he was traded from Chicago to Washington. He rebounds the ball really well. Doesn't steal, never passes, turns it over. Not a huge amount, but just doesn't do anything else. 125th in -1 rankings in only 24 minutes a night. 118th in points in only 24 minutes a night. So look, if this guy was a starter playing 30 minutes, he is a top 70 fantasy guy. Really easily. He actually could be like a Kyle Kuzma type of fantasy producer if he was in that environment. Now, he plays for the Bucks, a team that wants to win a championship, although some of their moves would suggest maybe they're not as invested in that as what they should be. So he plays the role, which is very, very important, and it's admirable to be able to scale his game back and fill that role. But he is still, I think, overrated a lot. Fantasy managers and in real life too. And I think there's going to be a reckoning where it almost becomes... I can't even think of the right player to put that next to. Like late career Carmelo Anthony? Where, he can be a bucket, but bro, everything else, what are we doing? That's a little bit where I'm worried there. You'll see all his advanced metrics. He's not ranked 250th in any of those. 262 EPM, 272 Darko, 265 drip. But that's bottom half of the league, which includes all the two-way guys. Fantasy-wise, he looks very much draftable. And if he played 30 minutes, he would be smashing through those numbers. And he puts them up. Big points, good rebounds, good threes. Fantastic. The rest, not that good. And the impact is a real problem with him defensively now, being as bad as he is. Playing as a center, not protecting the rim. Doesn't generate steals, doesn't pass. I just think that he is overrated as a player. I said he was 30. I lied. He's 28. He'll be 29 next season. There is a spot coming where he will not play 24 minutes a night. He will not be relied upon to be a replacement for Lopez or Giannis. He could still have a season where he is. Like if Lopez gets hurt or traded or whatever, maybe he is the starter and Giannis is the center and Portis is the 4. He plays 30 minutes and he's a top 60 player very easily. But I worry about some of the impact stuff with him making the team much worse. And that's basically the point of this show. Vuč, Thomas, Portis, Kuzma, Bamba. They all play these roles. They can all put up big numbers, and they will. But are they good players? And I think the answer at this point for most of them is no. For some of them, the direction that they're trending is very different. I bet you thought I was going to include Bol on this list, and I almost did. But Bol took such a big leap forward this season in the impact stuff. He still is only a reserve, and he's really a backup 4, not really a 5. He can protect the rim, he can shoot a little bit. He did improve significantly. He'd been terrible in the other seasons, like terrible. But he improved a lot in terms of his impact, and he still is a guy that if he played 28 minutes Bol, we would love him in fantasy. And the impact is actually much better. Now, I do fear if he played a larger role, the impact would turn around pretty significantly. But he adjusted to a role, and he played it well, so he is not going to be on my list. I do have 6 more guys who I want to give an honorable/dishonorable mention to. James Wiseman. I've seen Pelicans fans, before he was signed by the Pacers, go, man, look, we're fine. We'll just sign Wiseman. He'll be our starting center. Like, bro, do you want to make the playoffs? This is, and you saw the show earlier this week talking about the impact of all the players from the 2020 draft and how terrible this man's impact has been. He has been terrible for years, the whole way through. Oh, he just needs the right spot. Does he though? Or maybe he is just bad. But if he was to play 26 minutes a night, he'd get points, he'd get rebounds, he'd block shots, he'd get good field goal percentage, and it would be great for fantasy. Bones Highland. I liked Bones coming out of the draft. I liked the shot creation, some passing, some shooting. At the moment, though, he's like the off-court stuff is a problem. The locker room stuff is a problem. His on-court mentality is a problem. But we also saw it that when they had Kawhi and Harden out, and I think Russ missed the game, Bones started and posted a gigantic performance. And we know that if he was pushed into a big role, he would put up big numbers. There are certain players who won't. Patrick Williams has been playing 30 minutes a night for 4 years and it's never been good from fantasy or real life. But Bones would put up big numbers. He's just bad, I think. Taylor Horton-Tucker, do I need to elaborate? The man will put up numbers, but he is one of the worst players in the entire NBA. Hence why he currently, at the time of recording, does not have a team to play for. Just terrible. I think he's one of the worst players in the NBA. Marvin Bagley, another guy, like James Wiseman, amazingly used to be teammates. Now, where does Bagley fit with Sarr, Vuč, Holmes, probably backup 5 if they're going to play Sarr at the 4? He's adjusted to his role. He has improved. But still, when he's on the court, you are going to be bad. He doesn't protect the rim. He doesn't shoot well. He never passes. He's a points and rebounds player. But if he was to find a starting role at 27 minutes, like the end of last season, then yeah, we grab him in fantasy. That's really good. 2 more. Kenneth Lofton Jr. I know he's young. He has big games in the garbagest of garbage time. 2 years in a row. He's too short. I don't think he defends very well. I think he can shoot a little bit, but he's one of those ones because people love an anomaly. They love a skinny guy, Bol. They love a big chungus, Kenny Lofton. I wonder if DJ Burns is going to get the same treatment this year. People love that idea. But while the production might be great, like, hey, he scored 42 points in a game, that's fantastic. I don't think he's very good. And the last one, which again I think most people have figured out now, is the tank Tom Bryant. Just one of the worst defensive big men in the NBA. Put him out there for minutes, yeah, he'll put up numbers, blocks, points, rebounds, shoots threes, hits free throws, does it all in that respect. But he's horrid. Doesn't defend at all, never passes. oblivious to whoever's around him, it seems. One of those guys, good in fantasy, bad in real life. Because we did this show here, well, you probably know what is coming tomorrow, and that's going to be the opposite. The guys who are good real-life players who don't really do enough for us in fantasy to care. So, some early guesses at that. You can drop that in the comments as well. I can take this relatively lighthearted. I think I made them, so I know this, but I do think that most of the points that I made are tough to refute. Now, you might disagree with the overall idea behind it or how you value these guys, but I think I laid out my arguments. But go ahead. Tell me how dumb I am and how good Masai Ujiri is or whatever, because I know that'll come up somewhere. There's always something about Toronto that gets chucked in there. And just, again, quickly, the Toronto stuff, it's a joke. It's an ongoing joke for about 4 years. But people don't get that. Maybe I need to be less subtle. Hit the thumb, leave your comments, follow. Guys, we are done here. Enjoy your summer. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.